Hi, my name's Nicole, and I'm a pharmaceutical material scientist. Apologies for the really boring meeting room background. I'm not allowed to take videos in the lab, otherwise, I would have shown you some more interesting equipment or materials. Um, so, what is pharmaceutical material science? Essentially, I look at material properties, structure, and how those different material properties are changed or would impact manufacturing, processing, and the final drug product, and also how that will behave then as the patient has it in use and over time. Um, to put that a bit more in context, so your active ingredient in a pharmaceutical would be something like, for example, paracetamol or ibuprofen. And if you think about ibuprofen, um, if you wanted to take ibuprofen, you might want it for back pain and you'd use a gel, or you might want it for a migraine, you'd use a tablet. And if you're an infant or a child, you wouldn't be able to use those dose forms. You would need some kind of suspension with the old traditional plunger. Um, all of the properties required from your ibuprofen, you need it to be the right kind of drug, and you don't want it to be something else. You don't want it to degrade or lose potency. But you also need to then think about what excipients to put with that. How would you get it to become that dose form and that have that use? And that's where I come in as a material scientist. Having that depth of understanding about our materials and characterizing them helps us to get those dose forms to the patient and for them to be delivered in the right manner. What does a day-to-day my job look like? So in the mornings, I'll come in. I might be working in the lab doing some physical characterization, looking at solid state form by the X-ray, or using our particle sizing lasers, or um, doing thermal analysis or something to really understand what's going on with our different materials. I'll be sharing that data with the different functions and teams. So I've worked with people across the globe on different projects and products over the years. And I'll be troubleshooting. Materials don't always do what you think they're going to do. um, and coming back and trying to understand where things have gone wrong. I mean, the worst case scenario is that, you get your tablet out of your package and it's disintegrated, or your dose isn't there. And it's so important to understand all these different properties. So people will come to me with a problem and I'll try and help them understand and make sure that we deliver the right dose in the right way to the patient. Um, and I work days, and I can work quite flexibly around the work I'm doing, which I think is quite a nice part of the role. I have autonomy over my day and how I plan in that workload. In terms of the pharmaceutical industry, so there are so many different roles in the pharmaceutical industry. I happen to fall into material science, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But um, there there is so many a broad spectrum of different type of roles you could have. I mean, you've got logistics. You've got to get materials from one side of the planet to the other. You've got quality control, where you're testing the actual pharmaceutical products to ensure that they're safe for the patient and do what they're meant to be doing. You've got regulatory affairs, who deal with the different regulators who make sure that we are manufacturing pharmaceuticals to the right standards. And then you've got R&D, the scientists. In the lab, you've got, even within that, you've got chemists synthetic chemists who are making up the different molecules and trying to find new molecules that will help patients from different diseases. You've got data and AI. There's so many different things you can look at in that area to try and find new medicines. And even from down to support functions, for a functioning lab, you need to have all the facilities working for you, all the gas lines, the electricity, and you need to have a safe working environment. So, there's facilities as well. So it is an industry with an awful lot of different roles. Project management is another one. We have to get our molecules from start to finish, and as scientists do take some organising. And so that just gives you a quick flavour of the pharmaceutical industry. How did I get into my career? So I studied chemistry, sociology and maths at A-level, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't set out to become a material scientist. Believe it or not, as a child, I did not have that eureka moment where I'm like, aha. Um, so I was coming towards the end of my levels, and I knew I wanted to go to university, and I didn't know what to study. So I did some research, and I found that where you have a STEM degree in a STEM subject, you're very employable, and not necessarily just in the degree you're doing. So I did chemistry, and a lot of people I worked with then went on to work in the city. They became what's the word? Management accountants. I've known people who've gone on to do engineering, who've gone on to work in STEM itself, sort of helping, well, you guys get into science subjects. But I've also known people who've carried on straight into chemistry, did a PhD, and have gone on to become a professor. So there was so much you could do with that degree, and that's why I chose it. I didn't do particularly well, and at the end of it, I decided I really did not want to do any more studying. So I went and got the first job I could get, which was working as a physical properties analyst for GSK. And that started my interest in characterizing materials. And from there, I moved into the world of material science as I started to apply that knowledge of characterizing materials. And from there, my career developed. So I took every opportunity I could get. And when I had a manager go on maternity leave, I was like, can I manage the team? And I started to manage the team. I grew that team and developed like a characterization hub. And we were looking at materials from anywhere across the planet. So I could end up looking at toothpaste, sometimes sachets, capsules, Horlicks at one point I looked at. There's so many different materials I've looked at over the years. And I've worked with people, Singapore, the US, Australia, you name it. I've worked with so many different people, and I think it's so rewarding working in this kind of role. What do I love the most about it is the problem solving, troubleshooting. So I think the kind of degrees you could have to come into a material science role, one of those would be even forensic science, because sometimes you're like, right, well, this is the end product, and it isn't quite right. How do I pick the pieces out and work back to where the problem is? Analytical chemistry, pharmacy, pharmaceutical sciences, chemistry, as I said, biochemistry, medicinal chemistry, all those kind of things can bring you in the direction of the pharmaceutical industry. My advice to you would be try as many different roles as you can. So if you can get work experience, shadowing, just following someone for a day, asking people about what their day looks like or what their role is and what their job is. The more experience you can get, the better. I did used to take a lot of sandwich students. So those are people who take a year in industry placement. And I think if you are interested in working in the pharmaceutical industry, that's something to think about. There's also apprenticeships. So an apprenticeship is another way you can start to work in the pharmaceutical industry straight from your A levels, and you can, in some cases, get a degree as you go. And you get a lot of experience, you get paid, and you get to see a broader range of different roles across the job. So that's just a flavour of the kind of way you can get into the pharmaceutical industry. But as I said, try and get as much work experience as you can, because that's the best way to find out what you want to do. I hope all this helped, and certainly have a look up about pharmaceutical industry, or at least a STEM degree or a STEM career, because it's very rewarding. So thank you for listening. Thanks.